you do not understand white supremacy, what it is, and how it works, everything else that you do understand will confuse you. In all of these 9 areas of activity, economics, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war. Anywhere on the planet, minute by minute, day by day, all of the time, all of the time, all of the time.
Alrighty, let me say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all who have tuned in wherever you are, all over the planet. Welcome to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Now, to get in contact with the show, you may do so by calling 516-453-9921. And when you dial that number, make sure that you press the number 1 button, and you will go right to the top. And when you do that, if Mr. Fuller is answering a question, then you will be the next person on the line. So that'll be good. Looks like somebody already has. Also, if you would like to have me read your question, you can do that by going to my Gmail, 7MrBobby, BOBBY @gmail.com, and I will effort to get your email read. Keep in mind that there are many ahead of you, but I will do my best to get your email read. It's very important that you do that. Okay, let's see here. Let me start off by saying good morning to you, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, and how are you?
Good morning. I'm still learning.
You are still learning. What are you still learning there, Mr. Fuller?
I'm learning every day about everything that's going on around me and all the things that probably will be happening in the future. And when I say future, I mean in the far, far future. What the world will be like 500 years from now. Will we be having the same type of conversations? Will we have the same value systems? Will we be doing basically the same thing, say 100 years from now, that we are doing today, and have the same dispositions toward everything? I would certainly hope not. And I would think that, well, even here in 2020, that's what I've been thinking recently, that with this coronavirus going around and whatnot, this is an excellent opportunity, but I don't think it will be taken. I'm not holding my breath on that. And we certainly, everybody should be trying to breathe as best they can. But as this thing wears on, will we just relapse from where we started since the beginning of this ordeal into the same old pattern of bickering among ourselves, not giving it up, and just dig in deeper than we already have with the conflicts and hostilities that we always have and that are really cherished under the current and all of the past systems in recorded history that we have experienced. And I'm just hoping not. I'm hoping that this will bring about some type of change, but I'm not very optimistic about it. That when this is, as this wears on, even if it stays around another 10 years, will the animosities start coming to the surface and people start acting out in the usual pattern that they act when they're going through trials and tribulations? Or will it eradicate a lot of the things we've been doing before? I would hope that it would be the latter.
Okay. Well, obviously, you've been doing some thinking along with your still learning, which goes in with your thought, speed, and action, which also means that you are following a code so that you may be logic in whatever your approach may be. And that's what you talked about last week about thinking during this particular time is an excellent time for us to be doing some thinking. With that in mind, let's go to the phone lines, and we have Marianne. Marianne, you are now live with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. What is your question?
Okay, thanks. So on page 69.
Of what book?
The United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. The
revised edition?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
So economics is area 1, and it's incorrect to deprive any person of the chance to produce justice by eliminating his or her financial support. And it makes no difference if he or she is white or non-white. Isn't that correct?
This is page 69?
Yeah.
Okay, where is that at? I'm looking. I got page 69. At the top, bottom, where are you at?
Okay. Well, let me see. Well, I don't want to spend too much time. It could be that I've been mistaken on the page. It could be, maybe it's 79. Sorry.
Oh, 79? Okay, wait a minute.
It might be 79. But
okay.
But that's something that is said in the book. Is that right? That you can't deprive any person of the chance to produce justice by eliminating his or her financial support.
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
I'm not sure of where she's talking about. What's the first word in what you're reading? Where is that located? In the middle of the page or where?
I wrote this down before, so does that...
Oh, do you have the book there in front of you?
Yeah, I do. But maybe I could just go back in line and then I'll come back if possible, because I thought I was on the right page.
Oh, okay, yeah, because we need to
I don't want to waste time. Yeah,
okay.
I don't want to waste time.
Okay, yeah, call me back and we'll get you right up to the front of the line. Okay, all right, thank you, dear. Okay, all righty. Yeah. I can understand that, when you call in, you need to be right on it so we can follow you, so Mr. Fuller can answer your questions. Okay, let's go to the Gmails. This is from Victor up in Canada. He says this, Mr. Fuller. How can victims of white supremacy worldwide use all of their time and energy to utilize all 4 suggestions listed on page 60? When racist man and racist woman, white supremacists, collectively decide where we live, sleep, eat, and work within the system of white supremacy racism, will the suggestions listed on page 60 and 171 be enough to end racism and white supremacy? Okay, let's see here. Go to page 60, see what he's talking about. Okay, those 4. Okay, here they are. Do you see that, Mr. Fuller, under time and energy?
Well, it's the entire book, yeah. I mean, and even beyond, everything in the book. In other words, it's just what you do every day. And these are just some suggestions out of what to do. I mean, so that we have focus. Because you have to have focus in order to accomplish anything, whether you're changing a tire on a car or you're cooking a meal. You have to focus on what you're doing and why you're doing it. And this is basically it, if I understand the question. So that would mean, you can pick any page or no page. Just pick something in your own mind about problem solving, because that's all it really is. You're looking at a problem each and every day. And you say, now, everything is going to be either something I'm going to say or something I'm going to do, because everything is saying and doing. That's after you think about it, which is the first thing that you do. Think about what's going on right there in front of you. Any time, any place that you happen to be on the planet, what's going on right in front of you. And say, now, what is the best thing out of all the millions of things, maybe, or dozens? It might be just a dozen or two, or it might be 2 or 3 million things that you can say or do. So you try to think of as many things you can say or do that will be of the most constructive value at whatever problem you're looking at, and the best way to go about doing it. That is what you should try to focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And so if I understand, the question, which is a very broad question, it seems, that would be the focused answer. Everything is either constructive or non-constructive. Do the most constructive thing in every situation that you're in. That's all. Just figure out, before you make a move, before you say anything or do anything, you think.
Think, yes.
And yes. And then you say, now, right now I can think about maybe 40 things that I can say about what is going on right in front of me in the form of a problem. And then out of the 40, you just scroll through them and say, now, what is the best thing out of this 40 things that I have thought of that I can say or do that will best help solve this problem that I am looking at right now? Because the average person, well, I'll say just about everybody on the planet, you wake up every morning faced with what? Problems.
Yes.
Just getting out of bed, all right? It's a way to go about getting out of bed without falling out of bed. So
but he continues,
just starting there.
Okay. He continues with that by saying, but what if too many of the victims of white supremacy still don't know they are in prison?
Then that's a problem. So you think about how you can get people to know what they don't know. That's it, if you want to focus on that aspect of the problem. There's all kinds of problems all around you. You can just pick the one that you think you can work on best, where you happen to be at any given time. And usually the problems you can work on best is the one that's slapping you in the face right there at that minute. You don't have to think about, the problem that's going on down on the other block right then. You just take care of that problem that's right there in front of you. Or the problems you read about in the newspaper. You can think broadly about what you can do if you ever run into that same problem, because it's not affecting you directly right now. All right? So you can think about that, but at the same time you're thinking about that problem, you might be thinking about maybe 2 or 3 other problems. But the procedure, the codified procedure is, most problems that you are assigned to work on are the ones right in front of you. That's why that problem happens to be right there in front of you at that given moment. That's what codification is about. That's the essence of it. You take the problems that are given to you. There are problems that are going to be assigned to you. And if you try to squirm around them, that's where you're going to have a bigger problem. Because that problem is assigned to you to solve.
Okay.
That's the theory anyway.
That's a theory.
And
okay.
Sure. And it's a logical theory, because why wasn't that problem assigned to somebody else? Because that somebody else is not you. That's why.
Okay. Logical. All right. Marion is back, Mr. Fuller. Let me see if I can get her in here. Okay. Marion, you're live. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So, yeah, it is 68, 69. So it starts on 68. every person in the known universe should at all times be constructively productive and have a constructive income. This constructive income should be of the quantity and quality that will help each person to do those things that will help most in producing justice. Oftentimes, many people will abuse those who do not have adequate financial support. Oftentimes, many people who do not have adequate financial support will abuse others, and such conditions are incorrect. So then on 69, it goes on to say that in many ways people will speak and or act in an arrogant or uncaring manner towards those they regard as having inadequate financial support. Such speech and or action should never occur. In addition, it is incorrect to deprive any person of the chance to help produce justice by eliminating his or her financial support. It makes no difference if he or she is white or non-white.
Okay. Mr. Fuller, are you following her? I did. She started on the bottom of page 68 and then moved to the top of page 69. You see that?
Every person in the known universe should, at all times, be constructively productive and have a constructive income. The constructive income should be of the quantity, and quality that will help each person to do those things that will help most in producing justice and correctness. Well, these are the flat statements. I'm talking about everything. What should be.
Right.
So what's the question?
The question is at the part where you said it makes no difference if he or she is white or non-white. You're supposed to, you can't deprive any person of the chance to help produce justice by eliminating his or her financial support. And it makes no difference if he or she is white or non-white.
So the question is what?
My question is, if I can passively, without being found out, get a suspected racist fired and deprive them of the opportunity to, at least in that particular plantation, to continue to abuse people and practice injustice, if I can find a way to make sure that they are deprived of a job, what's incorrect about that?
If I understand your question, if a white person has a job, are you asking, should you help that white person retain that job? Or the white person?
I think that.
What are you saying?
I think I would like to. If it's my goal to try to deprive them of a job, if I can.
Oh, is it your goal?
Yeah, if
to
it's
try
okay.
to deprive a white person of a job?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, or any kind of financial aid.
The answer is no.
Why? Hello?
Go ahead, Mr. Fuller.
Yes, I guess that's I'm trying to focus on the question, and the question is, if you're on a job and a white person is on the job with you, and you're working on the job, should you try to act in such a way as to cause the white person to lose the job? The answer is no.
Even if they do the same?
Even if they do the same what?
If they try to make the job difficult on non-white people, if they're abusive.
If they are doing, if the white person is trying to make the black person lose his or her job,
right,
should you try to make the white person lose their job?
Right.
No. That's the answer. Why? Because you believe in justice. That's why I should. That everybody who needs a job in order to pay their bills and sustain themselves and be able to help themselves and be in position maybe to help somebody else if they choose to, that person should be helped to retain that job.
Okay. Thank you for answering.
Yes, ma'am. Very simple. See, because you focus on the concept of justice, even in a war. You don't have any what you call forever enmity toward white people or something like that. In fact, you don't have any at all. They can have it toward you, which many of them do if you're non-white, because that's the way they're trained in the system of white supremacy. They're supposed to have it, okay? That's all they ever know. They haven't known anything else. I mean, everything that they do is built on that. Every value system is built on that. Darkness, blackness, terrible, terrible, terrible. Black skin, dark anything. The dark of night. I mean, they talk about it all the time. Anything with dark. I mean, hey, to be shunned, to be thrown out, to be burned up. So that's understandable.
And
so
if I don't
you get
agree,
rid of it not by trying to be like they are. You get rid of
right.
it by replacing that entire concept with the concept of treat people correctly all the time, even in a war. All right? So you try to help a person as long as they're in need of help, okay? But you don't help them to such an extent that they do greater harm than they're already doing. You try to get them out of that. So as far as the job is concerned, you have a job. White people do hire black people. If black people have a job, it's white people that gave them the job. So you show that you have the correct intentions on that job and everywhere else, because you were given a job. And if a white person is working alongside of you and you make a contract, you might say, that you're going to work together, stick with your word, even if they don't stick to theirs.
Okay.
That's the procedure. That's the codified way. We're trying to make the world a better place, not make it worse than it already is, which that type of back and forth activity will do that, make it worse than it already is.
Okay. Marion, thank you so much for your calling back. Thank you. Okay, let's go to, let's see here on my board. David, go ahead. You're on with Mr. Fuller. What is your question?
How you doing, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Bobby? I had a question about this COVID-19 virus and combined with the 5G things that I'm hearing about, and I wanted to point out something that somebody pointed out that I saw online. Say, Chicago population 23% black, COVID-19 deaths 70%. Milwaukee 26% black, COVID-19 deaths 81%. Michigan 14% blacks, COVID-19 deaths 40%.
David, are you still
quarantine there? Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, you got cut off for a minute. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. During these times of the COVID-19 virus, along with the 5G, does Mr. Neely Fuller believe that some kind of way this is a combined attack against non-white people or just people in general?
It could be. I don't know. But we can find out simply by how everything evolves. And if it evolves and keeps evolving, that it's mostly the non-white people on the planet who are going to be dying and suffering from it, ultimately, then there's reason to believe that you can't. I wouldn't go so far as to say that the white supremacists invented that virus, but certainly those I can suspect and should suspect that the white supremacists are steering it, because they do that. Something will appear that's harmful among the people of the known universe, and many white supremacists, not all, but many of them, the white people who believe in racism, they immediately start thinking about, now how can I use this to harm a whole bunch of non-white people? And that's just the way they think. Why? Because I get fun out of that. That means something to me. I mean, that's a part of my culture. In fact, that's the root of my culture. That's the only culture I really care about. I don't care about nothing else. Everything else is, I just try to figure out how does that fit into what I'm already doing, which is being a racist. Because I like it. I'm addicted to it.
Mr. Fuller, let me ask you a question here. David, stay there.
Okay.
You say that, Mr. Fuller, but can you say that with respect to the Tuskegee syphilis experiment that went on for over 40 years?
Sure.
Why?
Well, syphilis, I wouldn't say that the white supremacists invented syphilis, but I'm saying they certainly, when it appeared, they say, how can they use it, to run little games and whatnot to their benefit and to the detriment of non-white people, particularly the black people that they had the experiments on in Tuskegee, Alabama at that time. That's the white supremacist mentality. Something appears that nobody's ever seen before, white or non-white. It just appears in the universe, some new disease and whatnot. The white supremacist mind starts saying, now we're all dying from this, but let's put a little edge on it. How many white people are dying from it? See, that's the way they think. And then, they say, well, so many, 2,000 died in a particular place or a particular time. And they say, well, how many non-white people? Well, only 100 at this time. Oh, no, well, hey, we got to get busy and spread that among the non-white people. That's the way the white supremacists think. They make everything a ball game. That's just the way that, it's, hey, how many points do you have? Give me a body count. And
see, now,
they train everybody else to think that way.
Now
that's
the narrative
the way
has...
that they think, rather than getting busy trying to get rid of the disease. That's not the priority. The first thing they want to do is experiment with how many people is going to kill among non-white people and compare that with the white people, and then they'll make an assessment after that and say, okay, enough already with this. I got my enjoyment out of that with this little ride until the next virus shows up, and so now we'll just all work on the cure together. But hundreds of millions of non-white people died, and just a few thousand white people. So that's fine. We'll go with that. I'm very comfortable with that.
Go ahead,
Everything
David.
is by comparison with them.
Yeah, I was saying that now it has come to the forefront of the narrative on the media on that black people are the most to get harmed or hurt with this virus. That's why my question was, is it aimed directly at us? Because now they're saying black people are generally like the most people who can catch it, if you understand what I'm saying.
Yes, I do understand what I'm saying. I'm saying that's the way the white supremacists like it. I'm not talking about all white people. I'm talking about those white people who really believe that the most valuable system of government and the only thing that's really enjoyable in any system of government is racism. That is the crowning glory of everything that is enjoyed. And, little things like fishing and hunting and going to movies and things like that, that's secondary, unless it's directly connected with the system of white supremacy and dominating and mistreating people of color. That's an entire philosophy, a total philosophy. Doesn't all the ingredients that go into that pie is all in the nucleus of that is racism. That's the way a white supremacist thinks. That's their mindset. That's their only reason for being. And that's why the world is in such a terrible state.
Let me
More
pause
than
you
anything.
just for a station break here. You are listening to the Counter-Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I am your co-host, Mr. Bobby. To get in contact with the show, you can call 516-453-9921. Be sure to hit the number 1 button, and you will go right to the top. And if Mr. Fuller is answering the question, you will be next in line. You can also reach me by the Gmail, 7Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com. And you will join the list of all these Gmails that I have that I will subsequently get to after we answer your questions. So there are 2 ways to get to it. 516-453-9921, 7Mr. Bobby @gmail.com, and I will get to your questions. Okay, Mr. Fuller, David, some people think, or Warp thinks that this corona is a hoax. You care to comment about that?
Well, they can say that because, if they think that that's what it is, they can say that until it's proven to them different. Right now, I don't think it is. Whatever a hoax means, if people are dying from it, now if people are lying about the people who are dying and the people who are lying there suffering, if this is all an act, it seems like a pretty grandiose stretch to me that the people who are lying there in the hospitals now, who are dying from it,
wouldn't dying be?
If all of those people all over the world are lying there who are acting, they're just acting like they're sick. They're not really sick. They're acting like they're sick. And when they cart them out of there, they're not really dead. They're just smiling in those caskets. I mean, they're saying, hey, we're part of a grand hoax. Now, if that's what's happening, then I'm saying, well, that's sort of a stretch.
Okay, well,
I don't think that's really what's happening. I think those people in those boxes are really dead.
Okay, would you consider that, those people in those boxes dead, those people in the hospitals and so forth, would you consider that collateral damage to make it appear that this is real?
No, because I'm not taking the position. I'm taking the position that this is real.
Okay.
At this point. But I'm also, like I said a few minutes ago about the racial angle, that the white supremacists, when anything happens, they immediately start thinking of, is it something that's beneficial to non-white people, or is it something that's going to harm them? And if it's something that's going to harm them, or if somebody repeats or recites to them, well, it's hurting everybody. It's hurting everybody. We got a disease out here that's really rampart. It's all over the place. You don't know where it's going to hit. It's hurting everybody. Then the white supremacist mindset is, so if it's hurting everybody, we'll try to cure it, but we want to make sure that a whole bunch of non-white people suffer.
Okay.
More than the white people. Before we take any action of any kind.
Okay. David, are you
That's
still
the
there?
white supremacist way of thinking.
Yes, I am. See, it just come to the forefront that now a lot of the deaths that they are putting on COVID-19, the doctors and some of the coroners are clarifying that a lot of deaths are not because of the COVID-19. So I understand the question that Mr. Bobby was saying about them, like maybe people thinking it's a hoax because some people have pre-existing conditions that ultimately take them come to their demise. So it's kind of confusing, and like the lines are real blurry when it comes to, like, did he die from COVID-19? Did he die from heart disease? Did he die? Because they, from what I learned, they have labeled all the deaths at this time. They have labeled them as COVID-19 deaths.
Okay. All right, David. Appreciate your call, man.
Thank you, sir.
Don't be a stranger. Don't be a stranger.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. All righty. Let's go right here to Patrick. Patrick, you're on with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. What is your question?
Good morning, Mr. Bobby and Mr. Neely Fuller. I wanted to just first, before I ask my question, kind of piggyback on what the last caller said. There's been some anomalies that lend to some funny business as it relates to this virus. One, like he said, the doctors are coming out and saying that on the death certificate, which is how they determine and get the numbers for deaths for anything, any disease or illness. Doctors are coming out. I know this one white woman doctor came out and said that she has a letter, and she showed the letter that they're supposed to, if somebody dies from pneumonia and they haven't been tested for COVID, that they are supposed to assume that the patient had COVID and put that on a death certificate. So while the virus may be real, the numbers may be greatly exaggerated, and all that information is starting to come out. And along with that, what's happening is all of the other diseases that people would normally die from have gone down sharply. So that it's kind of some funny business going on there. But my question for Mr. Neely Fuller is, so there's been a lot of talk about this so-called vaccine that's going to come out. That's going to save everyone. This magic vaccine that's going to save everyone from this COVID-19 that is not even as deadly as the flu at this point. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but Bill and Melinda Gates, they've been really, really pushing vaccines as a way to cull the population and solve a population dilemma as they see it. So yesterday, a couple of days ago, Melinda Gates came out and said, I see, bodies piling up in the streets of Africa over this. And the people in Africa are really upset. I mean, there's a lot coming out. The people in Africa are really upset about this. So when they come out with this so-called vaccine, and with everybody knowing the history of vaccines in Africa, or just period, right, as it relates to black people, if a leader of a country gets this vaccine in and approves it to be used on their people with everything we know, should they be seen as enemies of black people?
Well, anybody who is trying to harm people based on color, well, that the answer is yes. That's racism. Racists are the enemies of black people. White supremacists are the enemies of black people. They enjoy that. They intend to be that. They announce it all over the world. You better believe that's what we are. We're not, hey, that is our value system. That's our culture, our whole culture, not a part of it. That's the only thing that we really focus on as being monumentally important. Everything else is some type of side issue, hopefully, that supports that philosophy of racism. Racism is our entire essence. It's of everything that we do in all 9 areas of activity. Economics, racism. If I'm a white supremacist, all economics is supposed to be about racism. If I'm a white supremacist, education, everything that I learn is supposed to be in support of racism, white supremacy. Entertainment. If I make a movie, it's supposed to be directly and indirectly in support of the practice or the concept of white supremacy. Song and dance and all that, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion. I'm not interested in any religion unless it's going to be in support of white supremacy. Or I can fashion it or twist it and turn it so that it does support the system of white supremacy. Because no religion is supposed to be superior to the religion of white supremacy. So the white supremacists guarantee that. all over the world. Sex. Oh, yes. I'm going to manipulate sexual activity in such a way that it always works out that it's in support of the system of white supremacy. And sex will be used to make black people, in particularly, absolutely crazy. All right? Under our tutelage, because we'll guide them in that way. What do they know, except what we tell them?
Mr. Fuller, would you take the vaccine?
Maybe and maybe not. It depends on whether or not, at the time that I have to take it, I believe that it will work, or, depends on just what I think at the moment. It always comes down to thought, speech, and action. Reason being, the white supremacists are extremely confusing. They're the masters of confusion.
That's what Vorp is
so
saying.
Neely Fuller is naturally trying to figure out everything that is going on around him and why and all like that every minute of the day, because the white supremacists have a way of, and that's why they're the masters of it, because the confusion master does this. How do you cause the most confusion? You are a person who is supremely skillful at saying or doing something that is beneficial, and then mix in one or two things that are not. In other words, you'll have 5 things that are supremely beneficial, but you'll put some poison in there with the other 2 things that you add. That is a master, a confusion master. Does that. So a person, the average person can't tell, since it all looks alike. They give you some pills, give you 7 pills, 5 of them will make you stronger and healthier. 2 of them are extremely deadly, but they all look alike. That's the way the white supremacists operate.
My question on the whole vaccine thing was about the leaders of, let's say, African nations. So if a leader of an African nation rubber stamps this vaccine, even though there's plenty of evidence that the people are trying to put the vaccine to control the population or cull the population in a country, should we see the black leader as an enemy of black people?
No. He's just another prisoner of war who has been assigned to carry out his assignment in the prison. The victims are never the cause. The Africans are victims. I mean, the black ones, because they are victims of white supremacy. So we all have our assignments in the prison. I mean, we go on jobs every day. People say, well, that black person is supporting white supremacy. We all support white supremacy. If you're a prisoner of war, you support the prison. It doesn't make any difference what job you're assigned. They make their assignments. They, meaning racist man and racist woman, the white supremacists. They make all their assignments in their prison. And the prison is the entire planet. It's not any such thing as a so-called independent black person on this planet in 2020. Every black person on this planet comes under the total dictatorship of the white supremacists. So the white supremacists just walk out in the prison yard and say, you, and you, come with me. What are you going to do? You're going to go with them. Why? You don't have any options anyway, except to die. And nobody wants to die, all right? Most people don't, rather, except people who become suicidal.
All right. Let me do this. Patrick, I know where you're going with that, and I do agree with you, even though you didn't ask me, but I agree with you, especially in regards to Bill and Melinda Gates. Yeah, we're on that. And Vorp, you're speaking the truth. I just want you to know that. I agree with you also. All right. Thank you very much, Patrick,
Thank you.
for your
Thank
question,
you.
and don't be a stranger. Okay. It is 45 minutes after the top of the hour, And it is at this particular time that we have Mr. Neely Fuller discuss his book. Mr. Fuller, take it away.
You can go to producejustice.com, producejustice.com, and I have written a volume called The Textbook for Victims of White Supremacy, and another volume that's an addition to the basic volume called The Word Guide, because you use words to communicate, and those words should always work for you. And so I have a word guide that hopefully will help a person to eliminate confusion in the use of words, which is what the white supremacists are experts at. They cause words to cause confusion among their victims. And so that's why that's an addition to the basic book. The basic book is to talk about what white supremacy is and how it works, and what an individual person can do about it. You know, how you talk, how you speak about it, how you don't speak about it, the things that you do and the things that you don't do, because everything is a matter of doing and don't and not doing. So you want to always do the most constructive thing, because the white supremacists want black people to always do the most non-constructive thing, except when it comes to serving them and their cause. Then that's the only time a black person is supposed to be constructive. But a black person off on his or her own or among themselves are never, ever supposed to do or say anything that's of constructive value. That's the system of white supremacy. So the book is designed to help the individual person to counteract that white supremacist effect, so that we always try to do the most constructive thing under every circumstance. That should be the goal. Separate everything, because everything is either going to be non-constructive or constructive. There's no such thing as in between. Everything that you say and everything that you do. So the book is designed and tailored, hopefully, to the individual, to help each individual, black person, non-white person, victim of white supremacy, to think, speak, and act in a manner that has the most constructive effect in everything, 24/7, in all areas of activity. That's the goal. And in the process of doing that, be eliminating ultimately the system of racism and replacing it with the system of justice and correctness. You can get it by going to producejustice.com. Producejustice.com. That's the textbook for victims of white supremacy.
All righty. ProduceJustice.com. Okay, let's do this. You can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921. When you do that, make sure that you hit the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the page and be let in when it is your time. Or you can Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, at gmail.com. Question here, Mr. Fuller. What can victims of white supremacy do if there is reason to believe that racist man and racist woman, white supremacists collectively have decided to wage the war of all kinds simultaneously, like racial dislocation?
Oh, you're going to get dislocated. As prisoners of war, that's a part of their basic strategy, is to dislocate you, particularly when you get to a place where it looks like you're getting stable. See, they make you move. They've always done that. People who are called Native Americans and all like that, hey, Looks like you're getting settled in now. Looks like you're beginning to make some progress where you are. Moving time, you got to get out of here. And they got all kind of ways of doing that. So that's just an ongoing thing. Because it causes what? Confusion, dislocation. You've got to start all over again. You thought that you had some roots somewhere. You thought that some land was yours, which is a big mistake. That non-white people think that they're going to be in the system of white supremacy and you're going to own some land. That's not going to happen in the system of white supremacy, not on this planet. You're not going to own anything because you're not going to own yourself. See, the first step toward owning land, or owning what land will produce, is to first have total domination of yourself and your movements and what you can do and can't do. And they're not dictated to by anybody else. But as long as you are subject to someone else, that means everything you have belongs to that someone else, including your so-called family and everything. You don't have a family if you're black in the system of white supremacy, because all of you belong to the system of white supremacy. You all come under the domination of racist man and racist woman. So a black male talking about these are my children and this is my wife, and I'm the head of the household. You're not the head of anything. Why? Because the head of him is racist man and racist woman. He's completely dependent on them for everything. He's at their total mercy or non-mercy. That's what white supremacy means. You can never be a man if you're black in the system of white supremacy. That's not going to happen. You'll always be a boy. I'm a boy right now. They say, well, I'm over 21 and whatnot. That number doesn't mean anything if you're black. You're not grown. You're a black male, you're in the boy category.
Okay. So anyway, we can get the book by going to producejustice.com.
Yes, you can.
Okay. All right, before we move on, question quickly, Mr. Fuller from Jane Lance said this. Mr. Fuller, do you think collective prayer, a large number of people / believers praying for the same thing, is an effective weapon against racism, white supremacy?
I haven't seen any evidence of it. So I don't think that, because I don't know, how you measure it. How do you measure it? And I believe that prayer serves a purpose. I certainly have my own way of doing it, but I don't know what people mean when they say collective prayer. What is a collective prayer? Is it people standing shoulder to shoulder? Well, the coronavirus might see to it that you don't have that, which means how are you going to pray now that you're not standing shoulder to shoulder with somebody that you know from wherever you usually assemble? See, so I certainly don't believe in that concept, that in order to pray, you got to be around somebody. Or you got to be with your old friends or your new friends or some friends you just made or something, or some people who are kin to you. No. You don't have to be around anybody. If you believe in a creator, how come you can't talk directly to the creator without somebody being around you, or without even somebody being a liaison, a person introducing you to your creator? I don't believe in that. I don't believe that that's necessary at all, period, under any circumstance. I believe that you can talk to whatever created you in the manner that you choose to anytime you want to. You got a direct line. That's the way I see it. I don't see I don't see anything that would impede that. I don't see any papers you have to make out, anything. I don't see any vows you have to make or anything. Just do it. That's the way I see it, according to my religion. Of course, I'm speaking now according to my religion, all right? I'm not speaking about other people's religion. You do what your religion requires. If your religion requires that you have to have 100 people before you can pray or before you can be in liaison with whatever you think is your creator or whatever you think your religion requires you to do, the numbers of people or the location of it, it might be on some particular rock that you got to go stand on or something like that. I'm not going to say anything against that because that's your religion. And the code requires me not to criticize or even to make a hint or even that that's the incorrect religion, except one. I'm only authorized to criticize or oppose one religion. And that is the religion of white supremacy.
Okay. All right. Vorp just said that when you mentioned, you asked a question, what is collective prayer? Jane had mentioned it also, Jane Lance. So collective prayer, a bunch of people praying for the same thing. In this case, to end racism was at the end of Vorp's thing. But that is what collective prayer is, and Jane did mention that. Let's see here. We got 4 minutes before the show ends. Let me see this. If Marion, it says you're just listening, Marion, but did you have a question? Let me go to you right quick. Okay, Marion, did you have a question?
No, it was mainly like a follow-up on what the answer that I received.
Yeah, go ahead. You got about 2 minutes. Go ahead, sweetie.
Okay, I'm just having a hard time understanding how I can try to act to produce justice in the workplace if there are suspected racists who are abusing people and using divide and conquer strategies in the workplace so that we are at war with each other instead of attacking the white supremacist who is causing the problem. And I have been successful in the past in getting rid of white people in the workplace who do this. So I wonder why it would be incorrect to continue to do that.
Well, if I understand the question, not only when we say workplace, we're talking about the entire planet. I look at my workplace as the entire planet. So what do I do anywhere I happen to be on the entire planet, any time of day or night? I do the most constructive thing. That's all.
Okay.
Just stay focused on that. Don't think of it as the workplace and the play place and the no place and, and this place and that place. It's just a place. And what do you do when you're in any place? You do the most constructive thing by looking at what's going on and raise a question, because all problems are solved by the procedure of what? According to the code. Questions and answers. All problems are solved through the process of questions and answers. So if you're in the so-called workplace or any other place, play place, no place, every place, any place, you just simply say, what's the problem? If there is one. Because if you are on the planet, you're dealing with problems almost every minute of the day. All right? So you say, what is the problem? And then you say, what is the most constructive way of solving this problem? And what is the least constructive way of solving this problem? And separate the two. And go with the most constructive way.
Okay, got to leave it there because the first hour
is
coming to an end. I'm sorry, Marion. We have to do this. Okay, thank you, sweetie. All right, thank you. Okay, that concludes the first hour of the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and me, your co-host, Mr. Bobby. Stay tuned for the second hour of the Counter-Racist Code Show, also called the CRCS, heard exclusively on ProduceJustice.com. And as we enter into the second hour, 10 o'clock in the eastern part of the concept called the United States, you can get in contact with the show by calling 516-453-9921. That's 516-453-9921. And you can speak to Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. Make sure that when you call that number that you hit the number 1 button, and you will go right to the top. And when Mr. Fuller is finished answering a question, then you will be next in line. If you choose, you can also Gmail me at the numeral 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and I will get to your Gmail as soon as I can. Mind you that there are several ahead of you, so I may not get it on this program, but it will be read. So you don't have to worry about that. You will not go unread. It will be read. Okay. Thank you for the people that are listening. Warp, I'm getting all your messages and occasionally, responding to, but you're speaking truth today. And the others, many people are on. Let's see here. Let's go to, now let me get this right. Ikwani, I guess you're next up. What is your question for Mr. Neely Fuller Jr.?
My name is Brother Ikwani. How is everybody this morning?
Okay, my brother. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Okay, go ahead, sir, with your question for Mr. Fuller.
Well, I basically wanted to just I guess add on to the conversation you guys were having earlier, speaking about the collective prayer. And also I want to kind of segue into a question briefly. But my, 2 cents in on the collective prayer is that is very important from where I'm coming from as an African student, an African sage, and an African spiritual practitioner. And I asked Runoko Rashidi, in which we all can appreciate and we know the work that he's known for. And I asked him, out of all of the countries, I think he's gone to over 100 and some odd countries looking for black or African greatness. And I asked him, out of all the places that he's gone, where is it that he can, or he has witnessed or saw the pinnacle or the peak of African civilization, African culture? And he told me nowhere outside of the Nile Valley can we find this. And when we're talking about going back into our consciousness, our awareness, I find that as being a Kemet or a Kemetic practitioner, that was one of the things that was most important to our ancestors on the Nile Valley, as it relates to them creating and having sustainable civilization that were able to last for thousands of years. And where we are at a place and we can't seem to have a movement function properly for a couple of days or a couple of weeks, it seems like we could stand to learn a lot from what our ancestors did. So in my opinion, inside us, reverencing that which has created us, which in my definition is our ancestors. I know we're at a place now where we'll rather lift up someone else's ancestors, and a lot of times it's anyone else's ancestors, be it European, Mexican, Jewish, anybody ancestors except for ours, and we spit on the tradition. My question is that do you feel that our genuine come up, our total liberation will come from restoring, redeeming what our ancestors did at their pinnacle? And if it worked for them, will it or should it work for us? And this is, basic understanding of essential principles, interacting with the forces of nature. If it worked for them, will it work for us or should it work for us?
Mr. Fuller?
Well, I don't know. I don't have any evidence of any ancestors being able to come up with a formula that was successful against white supremacy, which is why we have white supremacy now. We have it now. We couldn't have it if our ancestors had a formula for keeping it from happening, because it did happen, which means that whatever formula anybody came up with for seeing to it that the world is not dominated by people who believe in mistreating people based on color, whatever they were doing did not work, according to all the evidence. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation now, because we would have stuck with what worked if we ever had it in the beginning. But something happened, and culture or your rituals or whatever you do has an effect. Nothing was effective against this juggernaut called the system of white supremacy in anything that the people of color ever did. Nothing has proven to be effective so far. So I'm just going according to the evidence. That's why we are talking about it now. White supremacy wouldn't exist if it had worked, if someone came up with an antidote for that. They may have come up with an antidote for a lot of things. They were not prepared to deal with the philosophy and the practice of a very simple formula, the most powerful religion and political system ever conceived in the minds of people, and that is the religion and the politics of the system of white supremacy. Nothing has proven more powerful that people have ever invented as a system of government, world government, so far. According to what? Neely Fuller? No, according to what we're talking about right now. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't that powerful.
Okay. All right, brother. Thank you, Connie, very much for your question. And don't be a stranger.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All righty. Gmail from Justice Soldier. Mr. Fuller, I have no question, but I just wanted to point out one factor regarding coronavirus, and that there could be a disproportionate number of blacks who are assumed to have died due to coronavirus. Quoting from new ICD code and guidelines for corona by the CDC that says, I guess that's the Center for Disease Control, says COVID-19, this is quoting now, COVID-19 should be reported on the death certificate for all descendants where the disease caused or is assumed to have caused or contributed to death. Now that was an order by the CDC that Brother Justice Soldier pointed out. So to me, Mr. Fuller, and I could be wrong, and I may be wrong, but it appears that the numbers concerning the death from coronavirus are inflated to reflect the thing that that Patrick had mentioned about it not being as real as it is, or even a hoax, as Vorp had said, because it seems as though that, and especially with this mandate from the CDC, that they want it to be that way. What say you concerning that?
I say I don't know. I'm confused, which is exactly what could happen, confusion. And to the extent that races have anything to do with it, they're the masters of confusion. So far the confusion is working. Why? Because people are confused, that's why. Some people are saying one thing, other people are saying other things. Some people are saying that the whole thing is phony. Other people are saying there's no such thing as this virus called COVID-19, that it's really something, another type of virus altogether. So you got confusion. So to the extent that the races has anything to do with it, the races are causing the confusion. But then on the other hand, the white people who practice racism may not be causing the confusion. It might be that just people just don't know, and everybody's just giving their opinion. Or it might be a very detailed plan that was well thought out and put into action. COVID-19 could have been something concocted in a laboratory by somebody who has a political agenda. But I don't know. So all I can say is when I don't know something, I just simply say what? According to the code. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm guessing.
All righty. Fair enough. This comes from Harry. Harry says this, Mr. Fuller, have you watched any movie that has come out over the past 15, 20 years? Because the thing I've noticed with most of the films on your list, on your to-see list, are all older. Is that by choice?
No.
Okay. Let me continue.
Well, wait a minute. Maybe I'm making a mistake here. If I said no just without thinking, I got to do some thinking. Well, I wasn't thinking about when the movie was made. I was thinking about what the movie is saying. And most of the recent movies, I haven't seen a lot of lessons in them. Even some of the most elaborate movies, because a lot of the movies that are made along the lines of, from what I can see, of what you call the video games, which means just a whole lot of blowing up things and some hero running in front of a fireball. You keep seeing that over and over and over again. It seems to be like that's a must. The hero, quote unquote, running toward the person who is sitting in the theater, sitting before the screen, and the hero running toward the person who is watching this. And right behind the hero is a huge ball of fire that's trying to catch up with the hero, but the hero is outrunning it. It seems like all movie makers, I don't care what the movie is about, have to have that scene. A bunch of cars turning over and coming in the direction of the person who is running. And you ask yourself, well, this looks like a video game, and so a lot of video games consist of that, from what I've seen and the little glances I have made. But the messages of the movie, the lessons you're supposed to learn, I see very little of that in some of the movies that are at the top of the charts in box office receipts, as they say. I say, how many lessons can you learn? Is there a lesson in this movie anywhere that a person can put to use? I see very little of that. And then some of the older movies, very cheaply made movies. Really kind of thrown together on very, 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 very low budget. Hardly any budget at all, some of them. But they have lessons, scene after scene. Casablanca, to me, has a lot of lessons in every scene. The Hustler with Paul Newman and Paul Gleason and Jackie Gleason about pool shooting. But it's not about pool shooting. It's a whole bunch of other lessons in there. And then obscure movies, like very low budget, like Dancer, Texas, population 81, or A Trip to Bountiful, movies that will put most people to sleep. That's two of them. Most people wouldn't even look at those movies without nodding off the first 10 minutes. They'd be through with the movie. But I can look at those movies over and over again, which I do sometimes when I have the time, because they are lessons, substantial lessons, universal lessons. But that's just me. Maybe other people can pick up movies and where it's a lot of cursing and a lot of, naked females and whatnot shaking around all over the place, and fireballs and people killing each other in what you call very dramatic scenes and different types of styles of killing and different ways of dying. These are very, 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 very popular movies, but the number of lessons in those movies, I see very few of them, if any. Some of them just, you come out, I guess if you look at it in a theater, I don't go to theaters much, but some of the movies I've been to, I just came out of the theater, and this was years ago when they first started making those type, with all the fireballs and whatnot. I just came out of the theater groggy. But as far as thinking back and say, what did I learn from this? Well, I learned a lot of camera angles and a lot of ways that they can go about making movies to make things look real. I saw a lot of that, a whole lot of that. The technology is superb. But the stories in the movies, they're completely non-existent, in my opinion.
Okay. Harry continues with this, Mr. Fuller. He says, and add to that, Mr. Fuller, I believe the Purge series of, quote and in the quote, series are films you need to see because it parallels somewhat what we're dealing with now. How rabid and violent white supremacy can be. Also, still the Matrix films and a few other people have suggested to you, Mr. Fuller. I heard Mr. Bobby say something about the TV drama For Life on TV a few weeks ago, and that's a good one, Mr. Fuller. A friend of mine hit me to it, and I'm now hooked. So with all due respect, Mr. Fuller, I know you're a very wise elder of ours who's seen quite a bit, and not much surprises you, but I'll just encourage you, if you can get around to it, to see some of these films, because I know you'd get a lot out of them. Thanks for taking time with me, Harry.
Well, I will take that suggestion.
Okay.
I'm always open to suggestions.
Yeah.
And if someone says they've seen a movie that has lessons in them, I always want to see movies with lessons in them, regardless of where they are made or when or by whom.
Okay.
But if it's recommended, if it's anything, that's just like somebody telling me, well, it's a certain school where I can learn certain things. Well, it's something that, if I'm told that what I'm learning in that particular course or that particular school will be of some constructive benefit, it's no different from looking at a movie or a TV program or a documentary or reading a book. If I can learn something that can be used in a constructive manner, learning is learning. I'm still learning. I say that all the time.
You do. That's true. You do say that all the time. Okay, let's do this. Richard from California. Let me move you over here. Okay. Richard from Cali, you're on with Mr. Fuller. Go ahead, please.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. Good morning, Mr. Bobby.
Good morning.
I want to coattail on the movie deals. First of all, I like the fact that you watch movies. I would not have even thought you would. put your time into it, but I do like that because I like movies. Now, the one movie that's on my mind right now with this pandemic going on, believe it or not, is Demolition Man. I just want to know if you have seen it. But if you haven't seen it, I would like for you to invest your time and watch it because there's a lot of subliminal messages in it. One of them that sticks out, and this movie's over 20 years old. I think I was in the Army when I saw it, but they had Wesley Snipes trapped in this area, and all you heard was, "We have him trapped in Section 8. I thought it was kind of weird, because black people can get trapped in Section 8. Now, the conformants lived above ground. The non-conformants lived below ground. It's in the future, and there was no touching. We weren't allowed to touch each other in the future. And I was wanting to know if he has ever seen that, because I think it's like a New World Order movie. It's teaching you a lesson, a subliminal, more like a message than a lesson.
Mr. Fuller?
Well, I haven't seen the movie, but perhaps I should, if it's got lessons in them that I can use in a constructive manner. If it helps to make me think seriously, movies that make me think seriously, I'm all for them.
I think this will. I think it will, and it does have a couple of fireballs in it, but I think that's just a distraction, so they don't really see what you're putting out. It's kind of like having a candle in the background and a strobe light in your face. You're paying attention to the strobe light, but then they pull the plug on the strobe light and say, "Hey, that candle's been there the whole time."
Mm-hmm. Richard, I'm going to tell you something. You're very observant because you mentioned the word subliminal messaging, and I hadn't even thought about that. But as you mentioned right here, Section 8, and we all know what Section 8 is. That's very good on your part, Richard. And also now, the no touching. Subliminal messages from a movie, Demolition Man. Good job, Richard. Good job.
Thank you, good guys.
Job.
I really appreciate you all taking my calls. I love talking to you. I'm driving to work every Tuesday, and I just love being able to talk to you. Keep doing what you're doing because you make me feel great. You make me a better person.
All right. Don't be a stranger, as I always say. Thank you,
all
sir.
Right.
All right.
Thank you.
Let me do this right quick. Is that you, Marion? Is that you again, or are you just listening? Marion? Is that you, or are you just listening?
I'm listening. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes. Did you have a question? Because if not, I'm going.
I didn't realize I was on. No.
Oh, yeah, they got a question mark by your name, so we always.
You can mute my line.
Okay. All right. So, you're just listening. Okay, I got you. Let me put you back into listening mode then. Okay. All righty. I'll tell you what we're going to do. Leona, you are now on with Mr. Neely Fuller, Jr. Go ahead with your question.
Thank you for taking my call. Good morning to you both. Mr. Fuller, I have a question about a couple of quotes. It's in the revised edition of the book, the code book, the section called General Compensatory Quotations for Thought, Speech, and or Action, page 410 and page 411. Actually, and I had another one back here on page 432. But this is one I wanted to ask you about. On page 410, it says, and I quote, it says, "Regard as especially dangerous any white woman who seeks contact with a non-white male for what she says is her need to learn how to solve the race problem." End of quote. That's page 410. I guess that's almost self-explanatory, but I was hoping you could elaborate on that a little bit. And the other one has to do with this quote on page 411. It says, "Avoiding the use of curse words may help a person to have a healthier mind." End of quote. And then the last one, this is page 432, it says, happiness without justice is a form of insanity, end of quote. I can go back to the first one. I know I'm supposed to only ask one question at a time, Mr. Fuller. I apologize. But this thing about regard as especially dangerous, any white woman who seeks contact with a non-white male for what she says is her need to learn how to solve the race problem.
Yes. So
yeah,
the question is?
Well, I guess I guess that's pretty self-explanatory.
That's a suggestion.
Huh?
That is a compensatory, counter-racist suggestion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
sir.
it makes sense. That's why it's in there.
Yes, sir.
In the system of racism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, recently, the Surgeon General of the United States, who appears to be a black man, made a comment about, in the context of this coronavirus thing, and he said some things about telling Big Mama this or tell Papa that. He made some remarks, and he got some pushback from it, from a number of people, because some people thought he was being condescending, what have you. And then when it turned out that he's married to a white woman, that made some noses flare in certain circles. And it made me wonder, it made me think that, you know, in some cases, I thought about the code and my limited understanding of it, that oftentimes when a black person is married to or sleeping with a white person, that black person is being abused under the system of racism, white supremacy. Anyway, this idea about avoiding the use of curse words may help a person have a healthier mind. Could you elaborate on that a little bit, Mr. Fuller?
Just what it says.
All right.
I find that conversations go better when people do that. And problems are solved much easier than when you use a lot of curse words. Because what do the curse words actually do? Words are tools.
Mm-hmm.
So you might get an adrenaline rush or something like that, but whatever that means, you might, help you to be more emotional about what you're saying. But I think you can actually just say what needs to be done or not done in a constructive manner to produce a constructive result without a lot of drama. Because the curse words basically is just a lot of drama. They give emphasis to what you're saying that is unnecessary, in my opinion. So why are you, using a lot of profanity? Why do you think you have to go into the profanity toolbox in order to say things that need doing? It needs doing, just say it needs doing and why it needs doing and come up with a formula for doing it, and then just do it. And what's all the other, blankety blank this and blankety blank that? That's unnecessary. Those are unnecessary tools in your toolbox for doing what? Communicating. And communicating in order to do what? Solve problems. Not necessary. That's all.
Okay.
Let me say this.
The idea about happiness without justice is a form of insanity. Last one.
Now, what is that quote?
Yes, sir. Happiness without justice is a form of insanity.
It absolutely is. And we who are happy in the system of white supremacy are completely insane, period. We are in a system that is non-just, and to have what we call happiness in that system means we're walking around in a prison yard happy because that's where we are, and we're not supposed to be there, the non-white people of this planet, in the prison yard of the system of white supremacy, the most powerful government ever to appear on planet Earth in recorded history. And it is an illegitimate government. And if you are happy in that type of government, you are, by definition, an insane person. Even if it's just 5 or 6 minutes of happiness. You're not supposed to be happy.
Leona, don't hang up. I have to do this station break. You're listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and I'm your co-host, Mr. Bobby, on ProduceJustice.com. To get in contact with the show, you can call 516-453-9921. Let me repeat that, 516-453-9921. Make sure you hit the number 1 button, and you will go to the top of the list, and then I can buzz you in. But if you don't want to call, you can Gmail me at the numero 7, Mr. Bobby, BOBBY, @gmail.com, and at some point I will have a chance to get to you, and your email, or excuse me, your Gmail will be read at some point. Maybe not this show, but it will be at some point. Okay. The last half hour here, we're speaking with, Leona had a question for Mr. Fuller, and she brought up a very interesting point when she asked the first question. Leona, was we regard as especially dangerous any white woman who seeks contact with a non-white male for what she says is her need to learn how to solve the race problem. Now, she asked that, Mr. Fuller, according to what was written on page 410 of the Revised Standard Edition of the United Independent Compensatory Code System Concept. The question is, you said that this was a suggestion, but why are we to regard, or you suggest that we regard that if this white woman is inquiring to a black male or non-white male about the race problem, that we should regard it as especially dangerous? Why did you say that, or why do you say that?
Because the race problem is caused by white people who believe in racism. So if a white woman in the system of white supremacy wants information of any kind about how to solve the problem of racism, she doesn't need to go to a black male and ask him anything about anything. She can go to the white people who practice racism, because they know how to solve it in 5 minutes if they want to. But they don't see it as a problem. They see it as the best form of government of the people of this planet that has ever been invented in the minds of people. And they have all kinds of ways of saying so. Say they are the ones who keep it together, and anybody who keeps something together, anybody who assembles something, or anybody who keeps together something that is assembled and keeps it going, knows more about it than anybody. A black male doesn't know anything about white supremacy, otherwise he wouldn't be a victim of it. A black male doesn't know anything except it exists, maybe. He doesn't have any idea about what to do about it. And if he does, he's not intelligent enough to act on what he knows, or has the will to do so. So he's the least person to go to, if you're white, to ask anything about racism. Any white person, male or female, if they want to know about racism, and certainly want to know about how to dismantle it, how to solve the race problem, they're closer to white people than non-white people are. White people are closer to each other than they are to black people worldwide. So all a white person has to do, if they want to know anything about racism and how it works and how to get rid of it, just talk to a white person who knows the most about it, because they know the most about it. Why go to somebody who's a victim, a prisoner of war of the system of white supremacy, and go and talk to the prisoner about how to solve his problem as a prisoner by not being a prisoner, when you can go to the wardens of the prison and get all your answers instantly, because they know more about the prison system than anybody. Why? Because they're running the prison system. It's not logical. So it comes down to suspicion of danger. 2, the black male who is approached by a white woman who says, I'm coming to you because I don't understand this racism thing, and I want you to explain it to me. She walks away from the wardens of the prison into the prison yard to ask a prisoner about how this prison is being run and who runs it and how it's put together and how it can be dismantled and how it was put together in the first place, or any questions that I asked about the prison. You always go to the people who set up the prison. You get your best answers. That's the logic.
Okay.
It's not logical.
Okay.
For her to come to the prisoner and say, look, I want to get close to you to find out about how your dilemma became to be what it is and what you can do to solve it.
Okay, you brought about some understanding there, Leona. Before I let you go, did you have any other questions so we can move on?
Yes, sir, just one quick one. Mr. Fuller, on page 432, same book, you say, in a correct government, all people are guaranteed adequate housing, education, transportation, and health care. And you got guaranteed underlined. Just for the record, why do you say that? Why is that true? In a correct government, all people are guaranteed adequate housing, education, transportation, and health care. Is that because that would be justice, or why do you say that, sir?
It would best those 4 things would best produce a system of justice. That would be the result. You add up those 4 things, and you're pretty close to having justice, meaning guaranteeing that no person is mistreated and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And if you got those 4 things, you just about got the entire package of what everything should be about. If it's adequate to take care of everything of constructive value in those 4 things, the transportation, the health care, the education system is set up so that you need everything that you need to know, you know it. And what can be better than that? Everything that you need to know to do constructive things, you know it. That's education, the way it should be at its best. Everything that you need to know to solve every problem that comes up makes you educated. There are no educated people on the planet, by the way. That's an ongoing process. Why? Because there are problems that haven't been solved. That's why. You're educated when you know how to solve every problem that comes down the pike. You're not educated until you can do that. That's why there's no such thing as an educated person anywhere on this planet called Earth. Because there's not a person that I ever heard of that knows everything about everything in order to solve the problems that need solving.
All righty. Leona, thank you for your call, and don't be a stranger.
Thank you both.
Okay. Go to the Gmails. This is from Joe Carter. It says this: Good morning, Mr. Fuller. All codes, electrical codes, fire codes, plumbing codes, etc., all have standards. Without these standards, you would not have a code. Would the 10 stops be a standard for your compensatory code? In the compensatory code book on page 60, you mentioned that there are 4 ways we should spend our time and energy. If someone is practicing these 4 suggestions but not the 10 stops, can that person still be considered to be on code or codified?
No, because you have to do a codification is open-ended. What do I mean by that? These are just words of suggestions, but suggestions are always attached to something else, or whatever a person suggests that you do. And whatever you do, wherever you happen to be, that's just one thing that you're doing at the time that you're doing it. Like if you're operating a sewing machine, or fixing a car, or you're putting up a building, or you're doing something of constructive value. That something that you're doing is going to have an effect on something else, that's going to have an effect on something else, that's going to have an effect on something else, and on and on and on. When you want to make sure that everything that you do that has an effect on anything, that effect is constructive. That includes all the things you don't know about that's going to be a result of what you are doing now. And that might be an infinite number of things, because you might not even be around. Say you build a house, and you build a house for a certain reason to accommodate the reason you're building the house at that particular time. 40 years later, that house may be still standing and is ultimately used for something that is non-constructive. So you really don't know, but you do the best you can with what you're doing at any given time. So therefore, everything is connected with everything else. That's why we call the universe, because every grain of sand is connected with everything that's going on everywhere, directly or indirectly. It has some type of effect. It might be a very small effect or a very large effect, or it might be eventually, because the sand moves around in the universe, a part of something really big or something very small, like the grain of sand itself. And it's the same way with the movements of people. Cause and effect and cause. Everything in the universe affects something. And so you try to make, as a person, the effect that you have on anything produce a constructive result as far as you can see at the time that you're doing it.
Okay. He goes on to say this, Mr. Fuller. Is it logical to think that suspected racist white supremacists would stop practicing racism, white supremacy, and start practicing justice in one part of the planet, while suspected white racists supremacists continue to practice racism, white supremacy on another part of the planet.
Is it logical to do what now?
He says, is it logical to think that suspected racist white supremacists would stop practicing racism, white supremacy, and start practicing justice in one part of the planet, while other suspected racist white supremacists continue to practice racism, white supremacy on another part of the planet?
Oh, well, that's not justice, because, justice is complete. If you got injustice, I think it's Martin Luther King that said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, or something like that. I don't remember the exact quote, but that's what it amounts to. If you're practicing non-justice in one place and you think that you're practicing justice in another place, that's still not justice. Why? Because of the definition of justice, guaranteeing that no person is mistreated anywhere, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. And that's every person everywhere. Now, you might say, oh, wow, that's, man, shoot, that's impossible. Not really. Why? Theoretically, if you can think of that happening and you really work at it, as has been proven throughout history, when people really think about something, because you couldn't think about it if it wasn't possible, all right, for you to do it. You couldn't conceive of it. I can't conceive of what it's like when there's no such thing as space. What does no space look like? What is it like to experience not having space? Space is something that's invented, and then things are put in space by the creator of space and the things that went into space. But can the mind stretch so far as to even think of what it's like for space not to exist? So the theory is, if you can think of the concept of justice, you probably can produce it. And you certainly should try, simply because you thought of it. Guaranteeing that no one is mistreated, and guaranteeing that the person that needs help the most gets the most constructive help. Everywhere, all the time, without fail. So that's the goal. I think it's a worthy goal. It might be that unreachable star. Well, why not reach the unreachable star? There's a song about that.
All righty. Before we go to speak about your book, this comes from Melissa G. Greetings, Mr. Fuller. Is it accurate to state that colorism stems from anti-blackness, anti-blackness stems from white supremacy, and therefore colorism stems from white supremacy? Is that accurate?
What's colorism?
Okay. Colorism is discrimination based on skin color, also known as colorism or shadyism, is a form of prejudice or discrimination usually from members of the same race in which people are treated differently based on the social implications from cultural meanings attached to skin color.
And the
in other words, discrimination based on color, skin color.
And the question is this correct?
Is it accurate? Yes, that's what she asked.
Is this correct to do so, to practice colorism?
Okay, here's the question. Is it accurate to state that colorism stems from anti-blackness, anti-blackness stems from white supremacy, and therefore colorism stems from white supremacy? She wanted to know, or they wanted to know, is that accurate?
It sounds like that would be accurate. Yes, because the white supremacists are supreme, so they teach people to mistreat people based on color, including people of color mistreating each other. I read an article this morning about the Nigerians, people who call themselves Nigerians, being in China. And they say that, according to the article, they are being discriminated against based on color under the guise of people fighting the virus. But they say it just doesn't apply to situations where they're talking about the virus. It applies to situations where there is no threat of the virus and people of color, particularly the Nigerians, Africans, are being discriminated against in China. But that is a result of the standard that's been set, according to compensatory counter-racist logic, by a racist man and racist woman, the white supremacists of the known universe.
Okay. All right, let me get this in, then we'll talk about your book. This is Chris, and he's making it under VGQ, but he said this. Mr. Fuller, I would like to add a VGQ to the last question suggestion a caller made last week about whether a victim of racism should help a suspected white supremacist in need during the pandemic or any other major disaster. A master ordered a slave to build a new house. So the slave, in an effort to get back at the master for how badly he was treated, decided to build that house with the weakest and cheapest materials he could find. Once construction was finished, the master said to the slave, "Since you've been so good to me, I'm going to give you this house to live in." This story of how the tables can turn reminds me of a couple of quotes from Mahalia Jackson. Quote, "If you dig one ditch, you better dig two, because the trap you set just may be for you," end of quote. Saving a person's life is a constructive activity, period. This comes from Chris from New York. Mr. Fuller, what say you before we go to your book?
Well, I don't know. That was a kind of a convoluted question. I usually have problems with those, but I just say what I said in the book itself, and that is, in what we call natural disasters, floods, fires, hurricanes, you help anybody that happens to be in front of you. I mean, you see, you're placed in a particular place where you see someone being washed away in the flood. They're screaming and yelling. They're in the car. And you see an opportunity where you can, without you drowning yourself, you can save that someone. You can throw them a rope or something like that. There happens to be a rope there with something on it that can help the person to get out of the situation that they're in. And you have the choice. You're given the choice. That's a gift of the opportunity to make a decision. Should I help that helpless person? The person needs help. The person is helpless, even though it's a person who you know wouldn't help you in that same circumstance.
Yes.
The code says, under those conditions, help the person.
Okay. Got it. All right, very quickly, let me go to Lola. Lola, you got about 2 minutes. Sorry about that, but we're up against time. Let me see if I can get you in here. Okay, Lola, go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Bobby. Good morning, Mr. Fuller. It's always an honor to speak with you, Mr. Fuller. I'm trying to evolve into a universal woman. The tragic arrangement between my family and I has gotten tacky, as you mentioned, Mr. Fuller, in your book, but it will get to that point. I think it's difficult for people to seek. Well, I think it's difficult for non-white people to seek and want and have a quality relationship with one another. You just try to help them. You try to throw suggestions, but, they get mad, and then the betrayal comes in, or at least in my opinion and my emotions of betrayal of people, but we are, it is a tragic arrangement that is happening amongst us. So with that being said, being constantly abused by non-white people can be a burden and overwhelming, especially when practicing to become a universal woman and wanting justice for yourself and non-white people. But my question is, how do we promote and produce justice to non-white people that don't see justice as a quality relationship?
Okay, Mr. Fuller?
Always, here again, it's the same formula. Right at the moment by moment. We only have the moments that we have. You don't have the moments that have gone by. And you don't have a guarantee that there will be another minute when you will be breathing. You don't have a guarantee of that. But whatever moment that you have, this is a gift. And was given to you, theoretically, according to the code, to solve problems. That's what every moment is given to all of us for. Why? Because we have problems to solve. We could have been born in a world where there were no problems, but that's not the case. So how do you know what problems to solve? The ones that are right there in front of you at that moment. So how do you solve a problem that you have right there at that moment in that house or wherever you happen to be with a person who is kin to you or not kin to you or whatnot? By the process of problem solving. And what is that? Questions and answers. And you ask a question. Is this thing that we are doing or not doing, does it produce a constructive result? That's all you have to focus on. Because something that someone is doing is going to have a constructive effect or a non-constructive effect. And that's all you really have to remember each and every day. It's not complicated at all.
Okay.
We have a tendency to take into so many things and make them complicated.
Yeah.
Just say, if the person doesn't, you don't have to think about whether the person is kin to you or not or anything, whatever that means, kin. Okay? Yeah. You're kin to everybody in one way or another. So it just comes down to one of two things, constructive, non-constructive. There's no such thing as in between. You're either doing or saying something that produces a constructive result, or you are saying or doing something that's producing a non-constructive result. Got
to leave it there. I am so sorry, Lola. You had to call back next time. We can get you more time. Mr. Fuller, we have about a minute, and we got to get you to talk about your book. About a minute and a half. Go ahead, please, sir.
Yes, let's go to producejustice.com. That's producejustice.com. And what will come up on the screen is an advertisement for a textbook, which is where I work from, and what I try to keep in mind and what I talk about on this program about a code, that we need a code that produces constructive results and how the individual person can get these constructive results, suggestions on how to do it. And with this feeling our way, the problems have never been solved, called racism, which is the root of all non-white people's problems on the planet in 2020. But you can get it by going to producejustice.com, and suggestions about what the individual person can do is what the books are about. Go to producejustice.com.
ProduceJustice.com. Okay. Thank you, callers. Thank you, listeners. Boy, you were off the chain today. Again, thank you, Mr. Fuller. Thank you for everybody. Thank you, producers. We'll see you next week, and trust me, we'll try to be better. Thank you for listening to the Counter Racist Code Show with Mr. Neely Fuller Jr. and me, your co-host, Mr. Bobby. We'll see you next week. Thank you, Mr. Fuller.